Hi, everyone. Welcome to this episode of Claims Never Sleep. I'm your host, Meghan Henry, joined by my co-host, Kyle. Hey, Kyle, welcome back.
Hey Megan, how you doing?
I'm so happy to have you today.
Yeah, we're just
You
gonna take it with this guest. We're gonna take a trip up the Acela, up and all down from Boston to DC and all out to the rest of the country, right?
Absolutely. So today we are joined by Alan Ness, and Alan is AVP of Claims and Tort Litigation at Amtrak. We get to talk about all things Amtrak, and holy moly, I guess I did not conceptually think about how complex of a network Amtrak is. And I mean, I knew it was complex, but just not to the extent that I now know.
Yeah, no, it's truly the amount of infrastructure that goes on, the amount of the different laws, the different considerations that Alan has to make in his role is pretty mind bending, and it's a pretty fascinating conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, just a little tidbit, Alan and I went to law school together. He's actually one of my classmates. Didn't really know that until we connected about the podcast. So I'm happy to connect with him now, even though we didn't really know each other during law school. So, but really interesting conversation. Love him. I think you all really enjoy it. So let's bring him in.
This is the Claims Never Sleep podcast, presented by Cruiser Mitchell, with your host, Meghan Henry.
Good morning, Alan. Welcome to Claims Never Sleep. I'm so happy to have you.
Great. Thanks for inviting me, Meghan. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, and just for our listeners to know, like this was an interesting combination because I reached out to you blindly, and then we realized that not only did we go to the same law school, but we graduated
same time, same convocation,
but don't have any
nope.
like independent recollection of each other.
Nope. I guess we just ran in different circles.
Yes, but I'm so happy to have another Villanova grad on. And I loved when we chatted before the podcast. We kind of rehashed some of the good old times and commiserated about how we got the old building and then
That's
everyone
right.
now has this new fancy,
that's right,
beautiful
help
building.
The ranking though, right? So everyone's like, oh, Villanova, they're great. I'm like, well, yeah, it is now.
I know. It's kind of sad when I think back of it because I remember being like, oh, I'm just going to Villanova, and now I'm like, what a snob I was. But I mean, it was great. It's gone up in rankings, great.
Yes.
But at the time, I was like not feeling down on it, but it didn't have the same clout as it might have right now.
That's right.
It's because of us. It's the alumni.
Hey, obviously, once you and I left, they were like, oh, now we can actually improve.
We already got the parking lot built.
That's right.
The world is our oyster. Well, anyway, one thing we talk to everyone who comes on this podcast is not only how you got into claims, but like for some of our lawyers, like how you like made your way into law school. Because I mean, I know personally mine was, I did not go to college saying I'm going to go to law school. I in fact had a very divergent plan from that. So what was your path and how did you end up in legal? And then we'll jump into how you ended up in claims.
Yeah. So I had no intention of going to law school. I graduated high school, and as we were talking before we started recording, I went to George Washington here in DC with the full intention of being political science and getting into politics, getting into public service. My first year at GW cured me of that pretty quickly. Once I understood what politics, I came in naive kid. Hey, I'm going to help the public. I want to do good. I want to, I have great ideas. And that first year of poli-sci classes really kind of cured me and said, no, that's not really what politics is. It's a lot of writing bills and, glad handing and horse trading. And it just kind of turned me off to it pretty quickly. And so I switched to be an English major because I enjoyed reading, I enjoyed writing. And then, I would say probably my junior year, getting into my senior year, I started thinking, well, gosh, what does that mean for me? And I had always enjoyed debating and writing and analyzing. And so I thought maybe law school's an option for me. I shared with Megan previously, I had met my now wife. We've been married almost 24 years. We met our freshman year of college. And so we dated all throughout college and had every intention of getting married. And I thought, gosh, if I'm going to be getting married and starting a family, I need a job that actually pays me some money. So I kind of slid into law school is what I would say as the option. So yeah, it wasn't, growing up, some people grow up knowing they want to be lawyers. There was no lawyers in my family, nothing like that. So yeah, there you go. See, had no one pushing me in that direction, but just decided that it seemed to work with, like I said, the analytical side of my mind, the reading, the writing, and it seemed like a decent fit for me. So that's how I ended up there.
And if I remember correctly, did you spend some time as a paralegal
in
DC? Yeah. Yes, so we were talking about that, and that didn't deter you.
Maybe it should have. No, so again, I met my wife and I wanted to get married, and we decided that me being in law school during the first year of our marriage was probably not the best bet for us. So I took 2 years off between college and worked at Jones Day as a legal assistant paralegal, which was really just making binders and copies and redacting depositions and. Yeah, somehow that didn't dissuade me, especially, speaking with some of the younger attorneys who were like, well, yeah, I worked, 87 hours last week and it was a light week. And, I get to take they're a fourth year associate and they're like, I get to take my first deposition. And I'm like, man, somehow it did not turn me off.
So fast forward, you decide to go to law school, you go to Villanova, and you and I both graduated always at the same time. Not a good market.
No, definitely not.
I know my intention originally was to go into real estate. Definitely not the path in 2007.
I was about to say 07, 08, not a good time to be doing that.
But what was your plan? And you and I had talked about, since you were in a different stage of life than many of us, you were like a more, not serious, I think we all were serious students, but do your work, get out, you had a family, you had other priorities at that time. But what did you have an idea of what you wanted to do, and did that change?
Yeah. It's funny, if you ask my friends from law school, the thing I always said is anything but litigation. I want to do anything but litigation. I thought intellectual property sounded interesting, copyright, kind of take that English major and go that direction with it. As you said, the market kind of changed that for me. My wife was pregnant our third year, and I needed a job. So we had family in Atlanta. So obviously Villanova in Pennsylvania, we had family in Georgia and had planned on moving there. So I sent my resume to every judge in Fulton County, Cobb County, DeKalb County, Gwinnett County, any county that bordered around Atlanta. I sent them my resume. I got exactly one interview, and thankfully, I somehow convinced Judge David Darden to hire me as his staff attorney straight out of law school. And that's kind of what began the anything but litigation turned into maybe litigation isn't so bad. He essentially handed me the civil side of his calendar. He handled all the criminal stuff and said, you kind of take care of the civil side since that's what you have an interest in. And obviously, on the civil side of a calendar in a state court, you're looking at a lot of insurance defense cases, a lot of car accident cases, premises cases. And it just kind of clicked with me. Always been somewhat risk averse, a careful guy, never gotten a lot of trouble. So it kind of jived with the way that I thought about the world. And that was kind of my first step into it. Yeah.
And sorry, Kyle, what's funny too at that time, and it's probably changed since then, but Villanova was such a regional law school. And things I did not think about at all going into law school, but how the reach outside of the Philadelphia region was so difficult. Now I think it's probably a lot different, but I too tried to reach outside the region and do the similar thing, send out countless resumes, and I got 0 responses. So at least you got one.
Yeah. And thankfully, and I'll say this too, I can't say Judge Darden's name without saying just tremendous human being, a wonderful judge, a great mentor. I don't know that he's ever going to listen to this, but he would be laughing at me because he knows he does not take compliments well, but just a tremendous guy. And I think he really did. I really think he took a chance on me. You know, we kind of connected over the phone when we were doing the interview, and I don't think anyone in Atlanta knew what Villanova was or where I was coming from. I can tell you I got a lot of funny looks because back then I probably still had my New Jersey accent a little more than I had it now. So I got a lot of funny looks from the judges around Atlanta. But I think you're right. I think in the entire time I practiced, and I practiced in Atlanta for 15 years. I think the entire time I was there, I met maybe 2 other attorneys from Villanova that were practicing in the area. So yeah, certainly regional. But like you said, let's be honest, you know, the first year or two, once those first year or two, you're out of law school, no one cares where you went to law school anymore.
No, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It just matters for that like first step.
Mm-hmm.
So sorry, I cut you off before, Kyle.
No, it's all good. So it's interesting that you started off your legal career as like a law clerk. How did that initial perspective behind the bench essentially like impact your view of claims, like, or even impact your view before you were on the other side, on the bar side, right? Because so many times you see people practicing and then they go into law clerk, and so they go from the bench, the bar to the bench. How did that initial perspective of judging and or viewing those cases from the judge's seat impact how you handled it as a litigator and now as a claims person?
Yeah, it's a lot in there in that question. But really for me, you know, it was about how do you present your case? And to me, it was the people that presented their case just giving me the logical argument. Yeah, the law obviously matters and we're going to follow the law every time, but tell me what logically makes sense here. You know, you get these motions that come in that have like bold in it and highlights and big text. And I'm like, I'm reading through these as a clerk and I'm like, what are you doing? Like really, what are you doing here? And there's not a lot of law. It's just a lot of bluster. And so I think for me, it was really about, and Judge Darden always said it, it's, you know, tell the best story and make the most logical sense, make it easy for the judge to rule for you. And I could tell you as a clerk straight out of law school who probably knew a lot about the nuts and bolts of law, but didn't really understand like how practice works. For me, it was like, if I had to do additional research and check your cases and make sure the sites were right and make sure those cases said what they actually said, and if they didn't, like, that's not going to go well for you. So I think that's really what I took with me as I went into practice at a firm and started doing the actual insurance defense work, is make it easy for the judge to rule in your favor. And then the other thing too is, I don't think I'm the only one that says, but always wear the white hat. Don't be that attorney who the judge or the clerk is looking at you unsure if you're telling the truth or unsure if, wear the white hat, be reasonable in discovery. Don't bring discovery disputes just because, really you want to go into court. And if that email is read in court or that you have to discuss a conversation you have with opposing counsel, make sure you look like you're the reasonable one. You're the one wearing the white hat. So those are the 2 big takeaways from me.
And I'm sure that too, because I remember being early in practice and being so nervous about arguments and things like that, which fair, you should be, but more nervous about what other people would think of me, like the silent judging that's going on. And I imagine starting off as a clerk and hearing some horrible arguers and people horribly unprepared. I feel like that would help you when you're starting to practice, being like, you know what, if I'm coming in prepared, I'm going to look better than a lot of the people I've seen or I've witnessed. Did you find that to be true?
I think that's exactly right. And this isn't just since I've been a lawyer, I've been this way my entire life, and I see it in my kids too. I'm an over preparer. Even having practiced for 10 years and you have to go take a deposition in a rear end accident, a lot of attorneys they'll walk in and look at the file for the first time as the deposition starts. I was not that way. I read every document, I took notes, I wrote down my questions. If I was going in to make an argument, you start with the big outline and then make it a little smaller. And so I was definitely an over preparer. And you are never going to be, even for trials and things like that. I kind of prided myself on the fact no one is going to be more prepared than I was. was. And I do think I took that from being a clerk, because you see the people that come in unprepared and fumbling for their documents. It just doesn't look good. So absolutely, that was another good thing I learned from Judge Darden.
So you're in private practice for some time, and then how did you then make the change from private practice into in-house for a carrier?
Sure. I'll step back a little bit further, because I went from, as the law clerk, I went to a small firm, and it was just a general practice firm. So we're talking, I got that clerkship in 07, 08, the market wasn't much better. I was able to get a job at a firm, and it was just general litigation practice. So it was real estate, it was contracts, it wasn't insurance defense. And really the insurance defense started because one of the partners I worked with had been doing insurance defense, had kind of gotten away from it. And one of the insurance companies reached out and just said, hey, we have some extra volume. Can you take on some of the cases? And I remember I was sitting in my office talking to another of the associates. There was 3 partners, 3 associates at the firm. I was talking to one of the other associates, and one of the partners walked in and he says, hey, I have this new insurance defense case. Do either of you, have bandwidth to take it on? And the other associate and I looked at each other, and he was like, oh, he was doing wills and estates. He's like, oh, I have to finish this will. So the partner looked at me, he's like, you're doing insurance defense now. Here we go. So that's how I started doing insurance defense and actually being on that side, and haven't looked back since then. So I was thinking about this before the podcast and how I could say this without looking like a total buffoon. I was a fine lawyer. I was fine.
It sounds like you're great. You're an over-prepared. That's the best thing you can be.
I prepared. I can tell you, I didn't love the fight. Some lawyers really get going. They want to fight about every little thing. I didn't.
They're annoying.
Very frustrating.
I didn't like the fight. I enjoyed doing trials, but it was a lot of preparation and, just frustration. I hated networking. Like, I love people. I love talking to people. I hate selling myself. So I didn't love the networking part of it. I was fine. I didn't have any grand visions that I was going to be, the next big insurance defense attorney in the city of Atlanta or anything like that. And just over time, so I went from a firm and hated the networking so much that I went in-house with Cincinnati Insurance as their staff counsel. So still doing litigation, but not having to do the rainmaking. And even then it was like, I was fine. I could write motions and argue them, but I didn't love it. I never really, really loved it. And just eventually made the decision, like, maybe I should try claims, in-house. I loved when I worked with Cincinnati. I love working with the adjusters. They reach out to me with questions, having those conversations. I love the leadership of it. I got progressively more responsibility for the staff and helping out with the staff counsel office as a whole for the company. And I love that part of it too. So just decided to make the leap. When you answer your 30th set of discovery for that month and take, your 20th rear end deposition, I was just kind of like, that's enough for me. And again, I'm not disparaging it. I still have a lot of great friends who do that. It just wasn't for me anymore. So just started applying. I said, let's give it a try. I was applying to in-house positions, in litigated claims units, in large loss units, major matters units, kind of doing stuff like that. And got not a lot of interviews because they were like, you're a practicing attorney. Why would you want to do this? And I'll drop another name of a great mentor of mine. I got a call from Country Financial, which is based out of Bloomington, Illinois. So it's the little brother to the big brother of State Farm in Bloomington, Illinois. They're kind of a regional. So they write in the Midwest and the Southeast and the Northwest. And they had a big presence in Georgia, which is where I was practicing, and had an interview with John Herron, who was running. He ran SIU and litigation for the company, and he needed a litigation manager. And we just had a really good conversation. And again, someone giving me a shot, someone who hadn't done in-house stuff. We clicked. We had a great conversation. We shared similar philosophies, and he gave me a chance to come in-house, which, again, extremely grateful to him.
And so having that transition now that you are like fully in like a claim, then it kind of piggybacks on Kyle's question earlier, that now you're looking at it from like a new perspective. So how was that transition?
Yeah. I don't think we can ever take off our lawyer hat, right?
Yeah.
I remember one of the biggest things I remember from Villanova is they would always tell us, we're not necessarily teaching you the law, we're teaching you how to think like a lawyer, how to approach every situation with issue spotting and resolution spotting and things like that. And so really that's what I brought, I think, when I moved over is, so when I joined Country, I actually managed a team of attorneys. So when we had our liability claims and they handled everything until it went into suit, and then we took over, and then I was kind of managing my team who was managing our outside panel counsel. And so really for me, it was almost seamless because it was just me and my team really making sure that our attorneys are doing what we're asking them to do. And since we were all attorneys and had all practiced, we understood what they were supposed to be doing. But I think the biggest transition for me was the shift from, as a manager, I couldn't worry about every little case, whereas when you're practicing, you're pending and your list, you have to worry about all that. It was really that shift to the broader strategy. Okay, we have this number of claims in Fulton County and they're going in this direction. What levers can we push? What levers can we pull? What buttons can we push to kind of, make sure that those are going the direction we want? And, things changed in Atlanta. We were on the judicial hellhole list for a long time, and that was almost the entire time I was practicing there. So it was a lot of, when I was outside counsel, we would get in a time limit, policy limit demand, and I would hand it to the insurance company, be like, tell me what you want me to do. Now I was the insurance company and we had to make those. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I looked at pretty much every time limit, policy limit demand that came into Country Financial in the state of Georgia while I was there, just because they're that $25,000 demand could turn into a $18 million judgment if you're not careful. So, so it was really a melding of making sure I was still thinking critically like a lawyer should think, but also stepping back and saying that broader picture of what does this mean for our portfolio? How can we move this over here to make sure that we're positioned correctly on these policies? So that was the big transition. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and that's also like good for outside counsel to understand. And we talk about this a lot on this podcast too, is trying for counsel to understand the actual role of the adjuster and how there's more behind the curtain than just the report that you're handing them. And you have to understand like what you say in there, it has a domino effect on a bunch of other things. And also the importance of like asking too, like, what do you need for me to be able to do your behind the curtain job? Yeah. Because you don't think, like, again, as a practicing attorney, you're probably not thinking about that part when you're evaluating a value of a claim.
No, you're looking at that case.
Yeah.
You don't, I mean, not that you don't care about their portfolio, but it's like, I need to give them the best result on this case and the other, 25, 30, 50, 75 cases that I'm handling. And I want to give them the best result on those. You're not thinking about that bigger stuff. Yeah.
No.
I think the other thing for me too, and so I've been in-house, in the claims function for just about 5 years now. I'm talking to two attorneys and I am an attorney. I would put a good claims adjuster against your best attorney. Along the way, I have met some claims adjusters who are smarter than my attorneys. They think more critically than my attorneys. They understand the pressure points in a case better than the attorneys. So, that was not that it was surprising because I had worked with a lot of good adjusters, but just how important those adjusters are and how good they are at their jobs and how much that protects the insurance company. I think a lot of people think, oh, it's the attorneys that are protecting the insurance company, which they surely are. But man, those adjusters, they work hard. They're smart. They've got huge pending lists that they have to deal with. So that was for me another big wake up call, is seeing how hard these adjusters work and how good they are.
Well, and also they've probably seen it all, like really, like, and any weird thing they have seen and had to figure out how to deal with, and they also have the benefit of kind of seeing how multiple different counsel evaluate things and approach matters, and like can kind of sift through it and assess and kind of figure out what works best. Like it's a very unique position.
Yeah, I think it's so important for the outside counsel, and this is really what I tried to instill in the council when I was with Country, is you need to partner with that adjuster or that internal attorney, because if you're not on the same page, that case is not going to go well. So listen to the adjuster. The point you just made, Meghan, they have a lot of really good insight. They understand the broader, the broader things that are happening. So that partnership is so important.
Yes. So, okay. So then what happens? So you're a country because then you go to Amazon.
I wish I knew. I really wish I knew. No, go ahead.
But you go to Amazon, which has to be super interesting as well.
Yeah. So I loved working for Country. As I said, John Herron was an awesome boss. Kathy Chamberlain, who was our director, she was fantastic. I think it became clear to me that if I wanted to continue to move up, they had some remote positions, and I think I probably could have gone a little further remotely, but they were one of the companies that really did want their folks at the home office. And I had moved. So when I was working with Country, like I said, we were in Atlanta for 15 years, and me and my wife and our kids less so, but we're excited to move back to DC. So we had moved back to DC since I had started with Country, and I really could not uproot my family again, within a year or two of that and move them out to Illinois. So really it was just, no hard feelings at all. Loved Country, loved working for them, but wanted something local. And as you may know, Amazon obviously based out of Seattle, but their HQ2 was in Arlington, Virginia, which is literally just across the river from DC. So just started looking for jobs, and I was a legal risk manager, was hired on as legal risk manager. And I don't know if y'all have heard, but the interview process for Amazon it's intense.
I would imagine so.
Yeah. It was
not for their drivers, I don't imagine.
I reserve. I'm not.
No, you don't have to comment on it.
I can't go down that road. No. I have PTSD, I think, from dealing with some of those. But I mean, it was like a screening interview, and then 6 6-hour-long interviews with other people, and then a final interview. I mean, it's intense. But because of that, I mean, and again, no disparaging other people, just absolutely the smartest group of people I had ever worked with. Everyone on the and so our unit was. We were, what was the name of the unit? Commercial auto claim. I can't remember the name of what the unit actually was, but it was essentially all claims that went over $1 million. They came to our team. So we're talking about the intense stuff, the multiple fatalities, lots of ugly stuff, but just such a smart group of people. It was some attorneys, some claims adjusters, just so smart. I felt like I was the dumbest guy in the room, which I often am, but like I really felt that they're just an incredibly talented group of people, and it was intense. I mean, it was absolutely intense. Amazon, they're innovative. They always want to be pushing the envelope. They always want to be doing the best, the brightest. They want to move things forward. And being on the claim side, that was hard at times, right? Because we are your risk managers. We are the ones who are telling you probably don't want to push the envelope here. You probably want to settle this case. And so it was an intense time, is what I would say.
Yeah.
Again, an incredibly smart group of people, really enjoyed working with them. But it was a little too intense for me.
Now, you said you were in like the large loss claims for them. Was it primarily like trucking accidents, like the big Amazon trucks you see on the road, not necessarily the guys who drive the little ones that were running out to your house,
the unmarked cars?
It was all of them.
Okay, wow.
So it was separated out into, without getting too much into their stuff, but, it was tractor trailers, vans, and then flex, which was, the people in their own personal vehicles living. And so those are the kind of 3 towers of claims. And we handled everything that went over $1 million. There was some insurance at a low level and an insurance at high level, and then there was a big SIR in the middle, and we kind of operated in that SIR level.
I got it.
But yeah, it was all the different types, and I kind of tended more towards the flex side of it. So it was the passenger vehicles, and then there was another unit that did the vans, and then another unit. But we all obviously worked together and managed together. But yeah, it was all of them, and we joke about it. There's so many great drivers out there, that are very careful. But it's like every other company. You're not always going to make the right decision. We used to say it all the time. Like, can we just eliminate all left turns? Like, no truck, no trailer, no car is ever allowed to make a left turn ever again.
That's
It'll
the
make our
Jersey
lives
route showing.
Just keep going right.
the jug
The
handle.
Jersey route with the jug handle.
Yeah, exactly. I'm glad someone else knows what a jug handle is. There's not a lot of people that do. But yeah, I mean, so it was a lot of things like that. Like, things just happen. I mean, when you're delivering, I mean, I don't even know what the number is, but I mean, you're delivering billions of packages every year on these vehicles. Accidents are bound to happen. And when you're delivering, sometimes at high speeds, you're driving on highways and, driving big vans, bad things really happen, and people get injured. And I think everybody gets this impression about Amazon. And again, I was in the claim side, so I don't know, but like, we weren't trying to shortchange people. We're not trying to like avoid paying a claim. We understand that risk. We understand that exposure, and we were always offering really good money. The problem is, when it's Amazon, everybody wants to go to trial against Amazon because half your jurors are going to want to blow us up.
Probably the biggest pocket in the world.
Yeah. Exactly.
And that's the other thing that I can't help but keep thinking about is, like, it probably has the largest fleet out there, you know, and just on percentage and volume alone, the accidents are going to happen because you just have so many freaking vehicles out there.
Yeah, that's exactly right. It was a lot of volume. I mean, obviously the over $1 million was much lower volume, but still it was, I mean, whatever an insurance company writes for, a commercial trucker, like, multiply that by the size of our fleet, which was, in the tens of thousands of vehicles. Yeah. We had a lot going on.
And then, though, in your role, you're really I would imagine, getting a real national feel. I mean, not that you probably weren't getting that before, but like, you are going to potentially be everywhere and anywhere. So you're getting a feel as to, the temperature of each different little sect of state, and like how it's the impact that accident's going to have there.
Oh yeah. Yeah. It's interesting, right? Because I started in Georgia, just practicing in Georgia. And as I progressed there, you move out a little bit. I did some stuff in Florida and Alabama and South Carolina. And then I went to country and suddenly expanded to all of the Southeast and helping out in the Midwest and the Northwest. Yeah. And then I went to Amazon, and it's all 50 states. I mean, and I can tell you that's where I learned a lot about California and how just a wild place to be a defendant. Learn more about New York. I had grown up in the New York area, but had never practiced there. Learn more about that. Philadelphia. I mean, just a lot of these places that are really bad, around St. Louis, around Chicago. I mean, there's just a lot of really bad places to be a defendant. And you learn that really quickly where you settle those cases quick, because you don't want to get into discovery and you don't want to get into a jury, for sure.
Yeah, and New York is funny too, because I mean, Kyle, you can correct me, but it's like New York is like, you have the boroughs, which is its own animal, and then you have rest of New York that's a little like normal.
Right. Relatively speaking. Yeah. I mean,
it's really not like, perfectly normal. It's like a little normal.
No. But yeah, that comparison, I'm sure it's very similar in Atlanta or in Philly, right? There's like, the closer you are in the more densely populated parts of a particular urban area, it's probably a little bit more like, it's less friendly for the defendants typically. And then you go further out in the suburbs, the exurbs, probably going to be a little bit more favorable to defend. It's just kind of the trend, it seems like, generally anywhere. I mean, I only know New York, but that's probably a pretty consistent pattern that you'll see throughout the country.
I think that's right.
So how do you get? What's the step that you get to get your way to Amtrak, where you are now?
Yeah. Again, Amazon, incredible group of people. It was a hard place to work for me. Again, as I said earlier, I don't love the fight. I don't love I want to work with people. And it felt like a fight a lot of the time there. And so I just decided it was time to move on. And again, just started looking for jobs. I'm really good at looking for jobs because I just kind of decide at some point, I'm like, you know what? And part of it too is not that I would get bored. I got bored practicing law, that's for sure. It wasn't for me. I didn't get bored at country necessarily, but I just, you feel like, oh, okay, it's time to move on. And that's kind of how I felt at Amazon. It's just time for me to move on, and just would always look for jobs and conduct interviews and things like that. I was kind of loosely looking, is what I would say, to leave Amazon. You know, again, like the people, like the work, but just was ready to find something else. And I saw this job pop up at Amtrak, and I'm like, oh, that's interesting. I remember riding Amtrak. We talked earlier, you know, I would take the Northeast Express from DC back to New Jersey, where I grew up, from college back to New Jersey pretty regularly. And just thought, hey, that's interesting. That's something new. And as I said earlier, too, you know, I had this interest in public service, and I won't get into all of it, but, you know, Amtrak is kind of partially public, partially private. And I thought, hey, maybe that's a half step back into that public service that I had been looking for. And I started doing some research on it, and we can get into it if you want to, but Amtrak is controlled by like almost a whole different set of laws than your typical tort stuff. I don't know how much you all are familiar with FELA, the Federal Employers Liability Act, FRSA. I mean, there's a lot of different federal statutes, not just Amtrak, but all railroads in the country are controlled by different laws. And so I applied. I'm like, surely they're not going to hire me. I'm a auto trucking premises guy. Like, that's what I've done my whole career. Surely they're not going to want to hire me. And I went in and met with Bill Herman. Again, I love to name drop, another great mentor, just a fantastic boss. He's a general counsel for the company. Just went in and I'm like, Bill, I want to be abundantly clear up front. I have never handled a railroad claim in my entire life. I have no idea what I'm doing. And he said something that I've always thought, which is, I want to find I can teach you the law. We have people here who can teach you the law. We can teach you the nuance of what those statutes say. I can't teach you to be a good leader. I mean, we can train you, but we can't teach you to be a good leader. I can't teach you to have the right attitude. I can't teach you those soft skills. And so again, you know, we had a great conversation, and I think he wanted, a big thing for them is they wanted someone who was a lawyer and a claims person, which you don't have a lot of those people. So luckily the pool was small that he was pulling from. But for me, it was another challenge, right? You know, I knew everything. I knew a lot about auto. I knew a lot about premises. It was exciting to me. Let's try something new. Let's learn about FELA. Let's learn about FRSA. So he hired me. I've been here coming up on a year now. And it's just another great place to work. I can't say I've ever had a job that I hated, which is a nice thing to be able to say. And just, man, people love people that are in the railroad love the railroad. People on my team have worked here for 20 years, 30 years, 35 years. You know, the average tenure on our team, I don't know exactly what it is, but it's probably around 10 years, which I think when you're talking about claims work, that is rare for a team to be that tenured. And even expanding outside of the law department and the claims department, similar. You know, you have people that have worked at Amtrak for 20 years, 25 years, or in rail for 40 years. So it's a little niche industry, but it's extremely interesting, and I'm excited to be learning new things.
And then once again, too, you are not in every state, but like you're spanning from coast to coast. Yep. So you're back. You're kind of expanding on. Yeah, you have that jurisdiction recap of like what you were doing with Amazon. So you're back with you're already familiar with the places that you're going to be, even though you're learning or had to learn like a whole new set of rules, so to speak.
Yeah.
But what I'm wondering too, and I just was thinking about this when you were chatting, is, you know, does Amtrak control just I imagine the trains and the tracks, but then they're pulling into stations?
Megan, I wish I could. If you gave me 45 minutes to talk about this, I still wouldn't be able. I mean, so I'm still learning it. So if you want me to pull like someone from down the hall, they could give you a much better answer. But really,
I guess I'm thinking about like risk transfer, because I'm like, okay, who's controlling the platform? Because I'm sure that it's not only Amtrak controlling the platform. There's some other entity that controls the platform. I'm sure a lot of crap happens on platforms.
Oh yeah.
Uh,
it's all of the above. So
yeah.
we own some tracks, really the Northeast corridor. So from
Okay.
DC up to Boston, we own a good chunk of those tracks. Everywhere else, we're typically operating on freight track.
Hmm.
So there's a I can't give you the exact 6 or 7
Yeah.
class 1 freight. So you're talking about Union Pacific, Norfolk Southern, CSX. There's big freights, and they own the tracks. In those other areas, we own some like up by Minneapolis and a little bit in California, but generally we're operating on other people's tracks, which means indemnity. So we indemnify
Right.
them for a lot of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I, I, we indemnify the freights for pretty much everything. It's not a secret, it's
Mhm.
federally, there's a lot of operating agreements between us and the freights. If an accident involves an Amtrak train, we pretty much indemnify the freight for everything other than maybe their own employees. But otherwise,
Mhm.
all third parties, all of our passengers, all of our employees, any property damage, we pretty much indemnify them for everything. And then when it comes to stations, we own some stations,
Right.
counties own some stations, states own some stations. It really just depends. But I mean, you want to again, talking about talented people. We have teams in here in DC, in New York, in Philadelphia, in Boston. I mean, they know, like they literally can walk me through the station and be like, next step we take, that's now with MTA.
Wow.
We walk back
Yeah.
over there, that's with LIRR. So like even within the stations, it's, there's dividing lines of who owns what claim and who owes indemnity to who. They own that staircase, but we've got that escalator. Yeah, it's very
Wow.
Yeah.
complex. And you talk about talented people. I mean, my managers and claim specialists from those regions, they know there's, and I mean, don't even get me started on California. Like there's just, I mean, you'd be amazed. Like some of the arrangements out there, they own the track, but we own the station, but they indemnify us for this. But it's a maze every single time.
Yeah. And like talk about a learning curve there too, because it's extremely complex. and I imagine too with counsel, you need to have
Oh, yeah.
counsel like that you really trust and that because there's a lot, like you want someone to kind of already have an understanding of how it works, because you don't want to like really teach somebody. But then there's not a ton of firms out there that specialize in railroad. I mean, I know of 1 or 2 in Philly.
Yep.
And they're like shrinking. So imagine nationwide, it's probably difficult to find people
Yeah.
who actually know inherently what the rail system and understand it.
Yeah. Well, like I said, the tenure of people working at Amtrak and working at the freights and in the rail industry is wrong. The firms are the same way. We use one firm, which is fantastic, Landman Corsi. They have offices in New York and Philadelphia, New Jersey, kind of up and down the East Coast. But Mark Landman, who's the founding partner of that firm, he's been doing work for Amtrak for over 45 years. The other partners at that firm are over 20 years doing work for Amtrak. And then move outside of that, we have other attorneys in Philadelphia that have been working for us for 20 plus years. Chicago, they've been working us for 30 years. And California, it's 15 or 20 years. So to your point, Megan, we would be sunk without our outside counsel. They understand the nuance of those federal laws. They understand, the interactions with the freights, which is just such a huge relationship to manage for us, not only on the claim side, but on the operations side. So yeah, without our counsel, we would be sunk. And we've got some really, 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 really good counsel that take care of us.
Yeah. So, but I mean, of course, like I feel like when you hear about claim, or if you hear about like a railroad claim, it is always like this. It's a catastrophic thing, but that doesn't happen very often.
Those are big trains, Megan. I mean, they weigh a lot.
I know, but those types of things don't happen that frequently, right? Like that is, you remember them because it's big news. It's a big issue, but that happens like every.
Yeah.
But most in between, it's small. I mean, not smaller, but like not
catastrophic. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So derailments obviously are, a train goes off the tracks. That's not good for anybody. I don't remember. There's 4 in recent memory here, and I would say 4 in the last 20 years. And we actually had 2 that happened pretty close together in 21 and 22.
Yeah.
But beyond that, we haven't had anything like that since then. And even before that, we had one, I want to say in like the early 2000s, then in the late 90s. So yeah, especially with Amtrak, it just doesn't happen that often. Yeah, so we get a lot of, there's not a lot of trains don't often run into one another. It's not things like that. So it's a lot of stuff like that. And, the catastrophic stuff comes from the derailments, but it's also, there's a lot of crossings. Another thing you don't hear much about, and that I learned when I got here, I'm used to seeing the ones in the Northeast, which you all may be as well. The gates come down, there's lights, everybody's so that's normal. Up here, out in the Midwest and in the Southeast and out on the West, there's a lot of private crossings, these crossings that have existed for 150 years because the tracks have been there and they've owned the property. And so we do get a healthy amount of people driving across tracks that don't have lights and gates. They just have stop signs or yield signs, and cars get hit by trains and people get hit by trains. And so even the minor incidents, as I said, like these are huge pieces of machinery. You could be driving in, your souped up Hummer, that weighs a couple tons. It's not going to beat that train. I can tell you that. So yeah, we do. I would say it's like every other company. It's a lot of really kind of small claims, and then a good chunk of that, the kind of, like you said, the, not small, but certainly not the catastrophic derailments.
And it's interesting that I understand it being like the crossings being in private areas, but you can't like push I'm just thinking about that property owner's liability. Like don't they share some liability for failing to have any?
This is the soup, right? Whenever I talk about claims, I talk about it's soup, right? It's, throwing a little bit of indemnity here, throwing a little bit of liability here. You got some apportionment over here. Here's some damages. Here's some medical bills. You kind of throw it all in the pot. And that's what we do with all of those. If it's a private owner, is there a private crossing agreement? If not, what does that mean? What does the state law say? What state are you in? What county? There's all different types of stuff that have to go into it. It's extremely complex. It's extremely interesting to learn. I have some people on my team that could rattle off those laws. I certainly can't, and not yet. I hope to be able to, but I certainly can't do it yet. But it's extremely complex work, and it's interesting for sure. And that's where the politics comes into it as well, right? Because Amtrak's partially, I won't get into all that, but we're partially private and partially public.
Yeah. Right.
And so, that there's influences that come in from the government as well. Local politicians don't want certain things or do want certain things, and that comes into play. National politics comes into play. There's a lot that goes, you think, oh, this is, a car that got hit by a train. A lot can come on that claim that we have to manage, and our folks do it really, really well.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and you're mentioning all these different like regulations and indemnity agreements and contracts in terms of like where most of the cases are venued, right? I mean, I know it's partially federally funded. So are you primarily in federal court in these various states, or do you have state court actions as well? How does that play out?
Yeah, we're often in federal court because often we can remove it to federal court.
Right.
And that's usually, what we want to do. But we do, if it's someone who gets hurt in a station, though, it's harder for us to remove something like that. You're not interstate at that point. You're usually just limited to the local entity that owns the station plus Amtrak, where we operate in so many states that we can't remove it based on diversity jurisdiction. But yeah, we do as much as we can to get them into federal court. And that's not a dig on state courts. I mean, I practiced in state courts most of my career, but for us, it's more about the consistency of the federal court. They kind of operate on a national scale, whereas the state courts are obviously more concerned about their state interests, which they should be. So yeah, it's a lot in federal court for us.
Yeah, and like I find in federal court, like not only is it sometimes it's not always better from a jury perspective, but just as, and again, not a knock on state courts, but from a consideration perspective and a timeline perspective, like it's consistent.
The rules are there. Yeah.
And you kind of, while the judges can change things like deadlines and things on their own, but it's generally like you know what you're going to get. Whereas, like, I mean, Pennsylvania, what flies in Philly, if Montgomery County is a completely new ballgame. So,
Yep.
like,
The local order from the local judge that changes all the discovery. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you don't get that federal. I mean, you get some of that in federal court, but like you said, it's like, you know, when your 26F conference is, and you know when your initial disclosures are due, an expert report, like it's all laid out for you, which certainly, you know, we like I said, the consistency of it is important for us in managing the portfolio.
Yeah, and like I think there's just probably a consistency in managing the scope of that discovery, which is probably really important to Amtrak too. That I'm sure there's lots of folks who want to overstep the scope to be able to pull out more information.
Yep. And the other exciting thing, you know, that we get to deal with now too is FOIA. You know, since we are partially, you know, funded federal funding, we're subject to FOIA. So we have the additional layer of not only are we answering discovery, we're having to fight off and respond to some of these FOIA requests as well, related to specific incidents.
Yeah.
So, yeah, a lot of moving parts. But again, it's interesting. I mean, to me, that's the most important part. Is I really enjoy the people I work with. The work is interesting, and I work for a great boss and a great executive team.
So is it true that you're like, I don't know if I want to ask this, that Amtrak employees get to ride for free?
Typically, yeah, is what I would say. It's like this whole system. If I want to go to, if I could walk a block and a half to Union Station and ride to Philly right now, no problem. If I wanted to walk a block and a half to Union Station and go out to California, that's a different story. It depends on, you know, how much is sold on there. You know, it's white, blue, and red fares. Like, and I'm going to mess it up, but like white, you can ride that anytime for free. You know, whether personally or professionally, you can ride it for free. But if I want to go to California, it depends on what's sold, how much is sold, what's the cost of the fare. We may have to pay a small portion of it, but generally, yeah, you can go anywhere. I did.
I asked as my friend of mine, cheapest person in the world, lovely human. His dad worked for Amtrak, and at the time, since his dad worked there, he could take the train anywhere. And this was some time ago. And again, being the cheapest person alive, like he took it an opportunity. Like I can travel anywhere that Amtrak goes for free with $20 in my pocket, pretty much, and that's what he did for like a year.
Yeah, if I'm traveling for business, I can go anywhere. You know, like I said, we've got offices here in DC, Philly, New York, Boston, Chicago, LA, and Oakland. That's where our claims offices are. And so I took the train up to Boston to visit my office out there. Now I flew to Chicago, but you know, I could go anywhere around Chicago. I flew out to Oakland and then took the train down to LA. So for business, I can travel anywhere I want to go. For my family and for my personal use, a lot of it is free, is what I would say, as long as there's empty seats. There's certain ones that are just not going to have empty seats, and you may have to pay something for those. But yeah, another great perk working for the company. I like riding the train. I mean, I ride the Metro to work every day. I wish I could take Amtrak. It just doesn't run out to Northern Virginia where I live.
Yeah.
What's the farthest trip you took?
Yeah. So the trip from Oakland, LA was 12 hours. That's, yeah. I mean, I got a little roomette and was able to take a nap part of the time. And I was traveling with another of our attorneys, and I couldn't sleep until the part where it's like over the ocean, like sunset, and suddenly I was asleep at that point because I hadn't slept all day. and so I was asleep during the pretty part, but it was cool. Like, a quick story, you know, when you're taking that trip, it's a lot of really huge farms. You know, you're talking about, you know, Valley in California, and went past like a Space Force base, and I forget where that was, but it's somewhere in Central California, and you know, got to see like the towers where they launched some of their rockets from and test some of the rockets from. So that's interesting to me because I'm just a big nerd at heart.
Well, I do feel like, though, like there's a huge part of, and maybe it's just like it's my own personal interest, but there seems to be like this surgence of train travel as a vacation of itself. Like, I don't know. I see, like, again, I watch these YouTubers that travel all over, but they take all these trains, and like one of the tips they did take was Amtrak from coast to coast, and then they went up and then took the Canadian rail on the way back. But I was like, it seems to be like a new, maybe, but new to me, like kind of vacation adventure to take the train cross country for multiple days and like experience what see all the places that you would, are maybe harder to see, or different things just to observe and see parts of the U.S.
Yeah, I think that's right. We have a very large population of people, typically older folks, maybe in
Yes.
retirement or who have more time and aren't working jobs. They really view the train trip as part of the vacation. And we've got some beautiful, like I said, that Coast Starlight down from Oakland to LA is just beautiful, farms and coast. And, there's trips that go from Chicago to Seattle where you're riding along, through national parks and over the Rockies. And, there's one that goes from Chicago down to Denver that goes through the mountains. There's some really, really beautiful trips that people really enjoy taking. One of my directors, she loves riding the train, and almost every year she'll take a long trip, and it's part of the fun. We feed you on the train, and then, it's not, Michelin star dining, but like it's good food. Like when I was taking that trip down the West Coast, I got a pretty decent steak and, some baked chicken. We feed you well. There's drinks available. You can turn it into a real trip.
Yeah, it's a little different from the Northeast Corridor snack car that we were used to in college.
Which I will say too, I'm going to plug it. They've made recent improvements to that as well. Up in their game when it comes to the snacks and the drinks available. Absolutely. And that's the thing too, is it is an alternative to flying, right? The way I always describe it is if I'm traveling on the East Coast, even when I wasn't working for Amtrak, I preferred the train, because when I was working for Amazon, my boss was in New York, so I'd have to go up there. I could get on the train here at Union Station and take it into Penn Station and be 6 blocks from the Amazon office, whereas other people, they have to drive out to Dulles or drive to National, fly into LaGuardia or JFK, take an Uber 45 minutes into the city. It was the same amount of time. So I honestly, I prefer it when I'm going up and down the East Coast.
Yes,
and that's not just because I work here. I actually do prefer it.
No, because you can actually settle in and
that's right.
get work done or sleep or do whatever you want to do, versus if you're flying, you're commuting so many points at the time and going through security and doing all the hustle and bustle, whereas you just get on the train, you sit, and it dumps.
That's the thing, is all of our stations, I can't say all because I don't know all of them, but the vast majority of our stations are in the major city. You're going into Chicago, like you're coming into downtown Chicago. You're not going to O'Hare or Midway, where you again have to take, the train station in Oakland is in downtown Oakland. The train station in LA is in downtown LA. So when you're coming into these places, you're literally walking out of the station and you're in the city, as opposed to having to do that extra Uber or local subway, whatever it is.
And I think the chances of a delay are much lower. Trains do get delayed, but it's not like planes. It's not like planes.
Yeah. We are subject, because again, we run on freight tracks and things happen. The big problem that we have, and it's really, unless you start building extra tracks, which would be a huge undertaking, is if something happens on that track and there's only a single track, you've got to wait for that something to disappear before that train can keep going.
Yeah. Although, to circle back to our pre-recording chat about the Knicks, I feel like this weekend, however, it's coming into Madison Square Garden. Between that and isn't the World Cup starting too? It's going to be mayhem.
It's a big thing for us. Yeah, and a lot of again, I'm going to plug Amtrak when I can. A lot of the good parts are, you want to go to a game, in Boston, you can fly into Logan and take your Uber, or you can take the train and be, nearby the station, and they're running shuttles. And, it's just like you said, Megan, to me, it's a lower stress travel than having to fly and do an Uber or do a taxi. It's literally, going straight near these stadiums. The one in Kansas City, literally is next door to the stadium where they're having a lot of those World Cup matches. Wow. And I'm glad trains in New York run underground, because I grew up outside of New York and spent a lot of time in New York. I can guarantee you, every game the Knicks win in that city, it's going to be mayhem on the streets.
Penn Station is going to be a zoo.
A zoo, because the Garden's right there. It's right above Penn Station.
You're right. Literally
above Penn Station.
Under MSG, right?
Correct. Yeah.
And didn't they say they're trying to limit the outdoor celebrations now, because I was in New York a few weeks ago, and I forget who the Knicks were playing at that point, and like we were leaving New York, and I was like, holy moly, there is like a giant party going on here, and it looked like a ton of fun. But then I think I was reading recently that it's been getting a little out of hand, that they were trying to limit that outdoor MSG area from the game watches, which I'm like, oh. I mean, I don't want bad things to happen, but
you go tell that group of rowdy New Yorkers you're not allowed to be out here partying because
no. Especially for the Knicks. I mean, again, I'm not an NBA guy, but like it's another level when the Knicks are good. It's because it is in a way it's a basketball town. You know, it's just been so starved forever. So you know, even me, I'm not a big NBA guy, but I would be a Knicks fan and go Knicks and. You know, I hope we need something down the Canyon of Heroes. I mean, it's been way too long. So.
Yeah, I mean, even I'm rooting for them just because, like.
I told you it's that Nova connection. You got Jalen Brunson,
that's right.
Josh Hart, all our Nova guys are playing for the Knicks.
Although I did grow up watching the Knicks, although my dad was a Celtics fan, so I know. I grew up in Connecticut. What are you gonna do? You're kind of on the line. People go both. You go to school, half the people are Patriots fans, half of them are Giants fans. No one is a Jets fan, Kyle. Nobody.
Why would they be? They're same people. I am not.
One of my best friends from high school, who sadly I don't stay in contact with much anymore, he was a Jets fan all throughout high school, and boy, that poor guy. I mean, just every Sunday, it's like, oh, just don't talk to him. Don't talk to him on Monday either. He's
put the bag over the head.
Just end the season.
Well, Alan, it's been an absolute pleasure chatting with you. And one thing I asked all my guests before we let you go, if you could give advice to your younger self, what would it be?
I think the big thing for me, I wish I had earlier in my career just accepted kind of who I was and kind of how I operated. Like I said, you know, I didn't love the fight when it came to law, but being at a firm and being at Cincinnati, you know, it's kind of modeled for you, like fight every case and prepare for trial in every case. And we're going to be, you know, hard nosed. And that just wasn't who I was. So I tried to do that a lot. And it didn't work. Like, I mean, I'm using the word fine. I was a fine lawyer. The thing was, as I progressed in my career and I became more of the, seeking common ground, you know, what can we do to get this case closed as opposed to just fight every case? And especially when I went into insurance companies, you know, just thinking to myself, okay, how can, you know, the best claim is a closed claim. How can we get this closed? So I think moving from trying to emulate others and be kind of that bulldog and be tough, I wish I would have sooner kind of moved into that mediator role and that reconciler role that I think much more suits me. And honestly, when, you know, people reach out to me, I have kids from GW reach out to me or Villanova reach out to me and just kind of ask to chat. And I tell them all, I'm like, just accept kind of who you are. Like, yeah, we can always learn, like we can all learn more skills and we can, you know, sand down the rough edges and kind of adjust who we are, but you can't really change who you are at your core. And lean into that. Because, you know, we need those hard-nosed attorneys, but we also need those reconciler attorneys. And we need those adjusters who are very cerebral and dig in deep, but we also need those adjusters that are really good at the relationship with the client. So really, to me, that's the biggest thing. I wish I had earlier accepted who I was at my core and really leaned into that more, which I think I'm doing now. And I think that's why I feel much better in my career now.
But I also think a lot of that comes with like maturing and growth too.
Getting older,
yeah. I mean, because I agree with all that too, but I think younger me would not have like I just wasn't there.
I wouldn't have listened to myself. Heck no, I would have been like, no, I'm a hard nose because that's what I'm supposed to be.
Right. You're finding yourself in a lot of ways. You're still figuring out, am I this? Am I that? Like even after law school, in your 20s, you think, oh, you're still forming yourself in a lot of ways.
Right.
You're trying to figure out. Who do I really want to be? Am I discomforted by this now, but can I become comfortable later? But I think having that mindset is great for anybody, any stage of their life.
And that's what I try. I mean, I try to tell people that work for me now is like, be who you are. Like, we all need to be professional and we all need to, you know, get the job done, but like do it the way that works for you. Like, I don't care how the sauce is made. I just want to make sure the sauce is made at the end. And if you cook it differently or put different ingredients in there, that's fine. So really, I think that's so important for leaders to share with their teams. It's like they are human beings. They have certain skills and certain mindsets, and we can't just beat that out of them. We need to let them be who they are and do the job in the way that works for them, as long as the results are there.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. So,
I wouldn't have listened.
Yeah, I mean, maybe someone will listen now. Or they'll roll their eyes and remember it. And if
that's what my kids do. Yeah, my 18-year-old and my 16-year-old. I say those things to them, and they're just like, "Yeah, Dad, we know." Okay. They're great. They're not like that.
You just have to keep telling them. Eventually,
the light bulb's going on with the 18-year-old. She's in sorry, I don't mean to extend this. Yeah. She's in an internship now at the end of high school, and I think she's really starting to recognize, like, oh, maybe my dad does know a thing or two.
Yeah. I mean, but the thing is, she's gonna keep evolving too. But I'm excited for her. She's starting.
And I give her that same advice, right? Like, you are who you are. Lean into who you are, and do your best with that. And I think you'll go far. You're smart. You're intelligent. You have a good attitude. That will take you a lot of places.
And I'm going to digress a little bit, but I think not just because of us, but kind of. I think our kids are like more well equipped for that like internal battle than we were. At least I didn't get this like sage advice from my parents. Like, I just kind of had to figure this stuff out on my own, and I feel like we as a generation are much more in it and that sort of stuff with our kids than at least my experience was.
Again, not to extend this any further, but whatever's said about the different generations, I'm in that weird between Gen X and millennial, and but my kids are kind of the Gen Z. Like, whatever you want to say about Gen Z, what I've seen, there is not a more emotionally intelligent generation than Gen Z. Like, more accepting of people, understanding of different perspectives, willing to change their opinions based on evidence present. I mean, that's what I see in my kids and their friends. And gosh, if everybody could learn something from Gen Z, to me, it's that. Like, be emotionally intelligent.
Yes.
And they're really good at that.
Yeah, we were not.
No.
I'm still working on it.
Exactly.
Yeah, sometimes I'll say something, my daughter will be like, "Mom, that's mean." I was like, "Oh, sorry."
Yeah.
Really, I'm usually pretty nice, but sometimes the filter comes off.
My wife says, sometimes that New Jersey comes out, and I can't help it. Yeah.
Well, Alan, it was an absolute pleasure having you on. Of course, for all our listeners out there, if you like what you hear, please like and subscribe to Claims Never Sleep. You can find us on your favorite streaming platform as well as YouTube. And thanks for tuning in.
This is the Claims Never Sleep podcast, presented by Cruiser Mitchell, with your host, Meghan Henry.